How close were our warships when they turned them around?
My understanding was that there were some naval vessels that were approximately 100 miles off the coast of Japan. They received some low-level indications of radiation that was not unexpected and was consistent with the kind of process that was going on at the reactor to keep it cool. Now, those ships were assisting a search and rescue operation that involved helicopters going back and forth to areas closer into to Japan. So, that the situation there, I think, was something was just a prudent response to that. But
Yeah,
again,
but
there was no direct radiological harm to the
No, but
radiation amounts we were seeing.
there was a reason that they turned around. It wasn't the helicopters could fly that distance easily. 100 miles is what.
I believe that, well, the indications that we had when they picked up radiation was that it was at about 100 miles. But again, I don't want to speak for the
but I think
Department
it
of
was
Defense
about 60 when they turned back. And
Senator, I'm not familiar with again, I don't want to comment on what the activities of these ships are.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that even at that point, 60 miles away, they said, hey, we've got to, in order to protect our crews, we've got to turn around and get out of here. 60 miles away, does that tell us something about the kind of risk that might exist when you have a calamity of this magnitude, of this type?
Again, what I'm aware of were radiation detections that were at a distance of approximately that amount, that were not amounts of radiation that were harmful to public health and safety. The analysis that we've done as an agency right now tells us that the areas that would need protection from a public health and safety standpoint, based on the limited information we have, is about 50 miles away from the reactor.
Well, that's a very large distance in a crowded state like yours, Madam Chairman, a crowded state like mine, or most places in America, tells us that we really have got to be 1,000% assured that none of the licenses we're going to give out, that none of the plants that have any questions raised about them are buttoned up really tight. Even if necessary, Mr. Chairman, to shut them down for an inspection period, because we cannot withstand this kind of assault on humankind. When we know that these ships were turned around to protect the crews 60 miles away, that tells us something, and again, you're dealing with wind currents and sea currents and everything else at the same time. So there's a lot of unpredictables here that would cause us to say, wow, we have to cover ourselves for all kinds of things. And it's very discouraging to see, after all these years, after a country that's so dependent on nuclear energy, fall prey to this. The price is yet not fully understood. So I would urge you, even though you're doing your studies, that some hastily prepared, reliably prepared information for the public is essential. And with that, I thank you for the work you're doing. But we've got an inferno in front of us, and we have to make sure that we do whatever we can to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator, for your comments.
The birds washed up, feathers torn, scientists mumble, eyes are worn, shake their heads, say what went wrong, check the numbers, drag it along, they write their books, shake their hands, watch it sink into the sand, call it heat.
See, that's the reason why the song I have to play, instead of just playing an intro, So instead of playing like an intro and jumping into the show, how do you turn that song on? Not the end of the world to play such a great beat. Time with the blob. And look at the whales now. That's what that song is about. So how do you just like play that intro only? Because the song's about something super important. It's about an extinction event. It's about the cover-up. And you have to think of the reality, what's really going on, not the propaganda machine, right? That's just for the many medias that claim they're on top of reactor 4 because it's like a banana or a potato chip. There could be hot spots under the sea. Oh, that could be, there has to be. TEPCO to begin coating the seafloor with cement mixture. Meanwhile, the entire planet was buried. The entire planet. The reactors were lost. The cover story is probably one of the best cover stories. I don't know if we got a better cover story of an event worldwide. We're going to talk about, we're going to pick up part 2. I just want to explain that song a little bit deeper. Updated with video study author. Now 20,000 excess U.S. debts, now 14,000. This was an updated study. And Janet Sherman, she's passed away now. But they looked for it and they found it. Excess debts. This was just heart attacks, an abnormality, and a spike post-Fukushima. So when the plume come in, you see that this symmetrical worldwide, by the way. And it wasn't just humans. So this is just a few pictures from the research expeditions that we carried out for many years, for 6 years after Fukushima. So it's particularly offensive to have a professor saying there's no adverse side effects and that is harmless like natural stuff, which he done in part 1. I'm going to do a little recap of part 1 for you in a minute. And so the trick was the big Zodiac burns a lot of fuel. So it tows the little one, you can go onto the beaches and pee. Everywhere Zoe when she peed. Beach. British Columbia, she didn't conquer. There's 27,000 islands up there. We hit a lot of beaches. And there was life, it was very rare. The life we did find was incredibly mutated. This was a rare example of mussels, by the way. And just a couple of algae instead of 600. This was up in Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Islands. And the few starfish that we found were all mutated. Severe tumors and cancers, which was described back in the day. So just barely find any. The ones you did find, you didn't know what it was. It's a new species. It's not a normal species. And so you go up to the roughest places imaginable where all the oxygen is too. And you just see a couple of algae. And you find a spot and hide away. She was waiting for me to come put her in the boat. She was getting pretty old at that stage. Bless her heart. This was pretty rare. Normally, if you do find species on the beach, but they're normally cannibalized by the insects and birds and other creatures coming down from the... Because you got a 19-foot tide exchange up there. This was these little baby crabs. You still find baby crabs under the rocks. But you didn't find many molts, for instance, right? You didn't find, and they were never destroyed. They were never torn apart when you did find them. And you can see the mutilated congenital malformations in the starfish. And that's a red sea urchin. I used to pick 20,000 of them a day. Just to 3 inches for the Japs. And so almost every starfish that we found was documented, was incredibly mutated. But we're doing this series of videos. We're doing this series of videos from the original first couple of months. And we started off with the recent one that we can find, official releases from the government's official version. Now, part one of it, is right here. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the one I just converted because they like 100 gigabyte files. And so I can't keep 100 gigabytes for every video. And so I convert them to, so this one here, health effects of disaster affected Fukushima Daiichi nuclear. And that's what the poll is all about too. What I'm showing you tonight and the poll itself is meant to work together. And that song we started off with. Should nuclear power, which is James Lucid on YouTube is called, and I give him a shout out. Sorry, James. Should nuclear power, I'll give him a shout out. I'll put the song there in a minute. Should nuclear power be banned to save whales, insects, birds, mammals, water, and earth from being poisoned? Should nuclear power be banned to save water, insects, birds, mammals, animals, and earth from being poisoned? Because that's what nuclear is. It's poison. It poisons everything, replicating cells. And it slowly eradicates all the species. The green, and something, I don't know why, it's so bizarre because green is such a connotation of nuclear, like the Hulk, for instance, right? Green on The Simpsons for the fuel rod that goes in his hoodie or whatever. Of course, you die right away, right? But it's meant to indoctrinate the children that it's harmless. And just repetition over decades. Same as Spider-Man, same as the Hulk. So again, mutated, disfigured, missing big lumps of tumors as they were been described. And so this is your typical weather at the time of 27,000 islands. You got to be careful because somewhere here is a rock waiting to take off the leg of my motor. Everywhere you go, there's something there waiting to fuck up your day on you. And we spent 5 to 6 months a year out there getting shit kicked out of us. Getting the shit kicked out of us. And I went from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska year after year after year. Because I'm a bastard. And I knew that was the best way to document whether there was any harm to the species. Now, it's hard to look at that and comprehend what it should look like. So just let me give you a couple of peeps what it should look like everywhere I was too. It should look beautiful. It should look amazing. If you did find a starfish, it was a new starfish, something never seen before. Nobody knows what kind of starfish it is. We're not sure. It got a little leg and a whole bunch of weird legs. We think it's a starfish. Could be an alien from another planet, I suppose. But the beaches are void, right? So you see how void it is there? It should be a very thriving, very beautiful, very colorful, a very something you don't forget. I used to dive in these same areas, so I'm familiar with all of these species. This was unusual. This was, is that red? I can't even remember. Was that sponges? Or was that sea anemones? I don't think I've ever seen a red sea anemone like that before, a big one. Yeah, they were sponges or something. They got nothing to do. Like, you know what a starfish looks like? Like, it should be just peppered with species. It should be beautiful, not empty. Finding mussels was an extraordinary event. That was once or twice a year. You're out there for 4 to 5 months at a time. You weren't finding any big, I can't even remember the name of them now. I know them all too well. I mean, there's 7,000 species up there. There's all the insects were missing at the high tide line too. You had a 19-foot tide exchange. Nothing on the bottom when you're coming in there. But that sure brings back memories. I've seen that site so many times I can't even wrap my mind around it. It was a typical day heading back. Well, you know, if there's limits originally because you were worried about wildlife, but then when you realized you were all exterminated, but what you forgot about was that the bears would get hungry, and you pulling in somewhere, they're going to come down and check you right away, especially your doggy. And we got videos of them showing up, swimming across 2 islands to get at us in desperation because there's nothing to eat in the forest. The forests were silent. The insects, 30,000 insects were missing in the tidal zones. Now, let's move ahead. And all the whales of all species are showing up severe, and I mean severe, catastrophic, unprecedented, inconceivable, unknown. We've never seen anything like this before. We got all the gray whales will probably be dead next year at the most. They're all emaciated. That's the gallows laugh. They were all emaciated last year before they even got to their northern spot for the southerly run. They were emaciated. When they headed to the southerly run, which was Baja, California this year, right? They've left there already, headed north again. So that's 3 years in a row, severe emaciation. Now they're showing up everywhere. that's supposed to be close to 90,000 pounds. It might be 5,000 pounds. The bride's whale should be 80,000 pounds. It's maybe 1,800 pounds. The humpback whales, we've never even seen anything like any of these. We've never seen anything like that. But even worse, the blue whale should weigh 200 tons. It probably weighs, say, 10 tons. That's being generous because it's so friggin' long. You'll say, yeah, 10 tons, but that's being, like, we've never encountered anything like this. So this should weigh 380,000 pounds and maybe weighs 20, 25, 30,000 pounds. But that's because it's 70, 80, 85, 90 feet long, right? It's still 300,000 pounds shy of what it should be. We're seeing this in all the species. It's not. They acknowledged that just one go. This was 2019. There was over 7,000 humpback whales that starved to death. 7,000. And so when the NRC was saying that they were 100 miles off the coast. The USS Ronald Reagan was actually 1 kilometer away. They actually changed 12 engines on those helicopters because they were so radioactive they couldn't use them anymore. But they were defecating in the hallways. The bathrooms were plugged up. I know this sounds gross. They actually had them out there scrubbing the deck and said that was decontamination. They've grinded the deck down since then in refits. They brought it in and grinded everything down twice or 3 times maybe. I can't remember, at least twice. This is went into the yard and they grinded everything off the surfaces trying to get rid of the radiation. But all their digital watches stopped working at the same time. Everybody started laughing and then they all got diarrhea and now they're all sick and the NRC came out and done them good. They wrecked their future. So just before it jumps into reactor 4, looks like that over there on that day, right? Not like that, but that's what it looked like a year later. I get the picture. There we go. So there was 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools. And each fuel pool could have had 4 reactor cores. There's 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. They accumulate 5.5, 5.75 reactor cores in the fuel pools a decade. They don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. And so you can count on at least 8 of the reactor cores at the top of the buildings. A little better than half of what. Theoretically, there's a lot more there because fuel change is not always 12, 14 months. Many times they're much quicker and much more detailed, right? Health effects of disasters. So this was on the 16th. And on the 16th, this is what it looked like. This was on the 15th. Well, 15th. They're 12 hours ahead of us. And so 15 our time, 14th our time, 15th their time. I don't know. It could easily be that. I'm also taking into consideration that reactor 5 and 6. These pictures were released in 2021. Nobody's ever showed them to you except for this site, unfortunately. And when you zoom in, reactor 6 is completely redacted, the roof included, and the same with the turbine building, completely redacted. And the same with the venting system, and in between these buildings, these are huge skyscrapers. These are 19-story buildings, the reactors. They're 190 feet, 65 meters. So why were they pixelated? And then why was the common span fuel pool across the street from reactor 4 pixelated out? And what you're seeing behind is the tsunami had swept up all kinds of transport truck containers and stacked them up behind the common span fuel pool, which is completely redacted. So these were high-quality pictures that were taken originally and released in 2021, 736 mystery pictures, I call them. You can download them and go find my videos, this year's video, last year's video, or the first one 4 years ago. We've done more than that. 4 years ago, that's right. All right. So you got to take into consideration we could have lost common span fuel pool, which is 11 million pounds or something. Reactor, why were the reactors also redacted? And reactor 6. And the dry cache storage, which was down on the seafront, was just a couple of 100 feet that way. And so you can see the damage. So this was a common span fuel pool. We do got pictures they released early in the first couple of years of the dry storage rather. And the common span fuel pool, of course, the reactor is on the same road as reactor 4 and reactor 3 behind me, and the tsunami ran right through that building. And so, like the other reactors that blew up, there was 3 that they acknowledged, but there was actually, as you'll see, reactor 4 was lost too, but they successfully covered it all up. And that's just the way it's going to be unless we get a big media, but all the media is in on it. They're telling you to lie. And then your universities and your medias, which are controlled, of course, by the universities, right? They're seeding the media with their inbreeds, the inbreed of the inbreeds of the inbreeds from the nuclear industry. They're everywhere now. They captured your whole planet. And they're overwhelmingly working for UN in different facets of it. And churn, we got a bunch of more stories on churn for maybe tomorrow night if everything goes good. We got a snowstorm coming in tonight and tomorrow, and I'm not sure that's going to impact me. I'll explain that in a little bit. March 16, 2011, health effects. So that's the one we're covering as part 2. You don't need to see part 1. I'm going to give you a quick intro. By the way, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Anna Clark, and with all the other media, you'll see that these disclaimers way down the paragraphs. International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator. You don't need to hear anything else. They're not a regulator. They don't have any authority. So why are they meddling in everybody's personal? They don't have the authority for fuel pools or reactor cores or new plants or small modular reactors or fusion plants or nuclear waste or hospital doses or anything else. They have no authority. They're not a regulatory agency, not in a position to judge or approve Japan's anything. It's soil, it's plants, it's trees, it's waste, it's water, or anything else. They pretend they are. The media puts them on a pedestal, but the reality of it is they're not a regulatory agency. They can ensure the safety of water release, but how can you do it when you're not a regulatory agency? They also acknowledge absurd doses up to a sievert for children's thyroids in NAMI. When I was sievert, 7 kilometers away, you'd have a radioactive fallout. And in comparison,
the fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl.
So what they mean by that was Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, it was a new reactor, it was a small reactor. It didn't have decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings. It was graphite. These are massive reactors, 19-story buildings. These are huge inventories. They were pure uranium, pure plutonium, and there was over 3 decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings, and this is what made this plume. Now, this plume is radiation. It's particles, fuel turned into particles. Those particles are all splitting atoms. So that doubles constantly every second. The media has claimed they're on top of a building that doesn't even exist. I'm just getting you up to speed before we jump into it. When you see neutron beams, you don't see people. You see homeless or destitute if there's somebody moving, but it ain't going to be academics or scientists. And when this came out on the 14th, and this one, there was you couldn't drag a nuclear scientist to within 100 miles of that place. You close your eyes there. The forecast can by no means be released to the public. Government hid the simulation because it was very, very bad. This was Frank von Hippel. We're almost to the video. This is Frank von Hippel He worked for the government, the White House, or the Pentagon, I can't remember. He's a professor. And this was on the 16th, the same day as, we're going to jump to the video after this, the same day as the Japanese government official narrative came out to the press club, the foreign press club. That's the video that we're going to jump into right after this little clip.
And if, in terms of what we know about the capacity, about how many fuel rods would likely be inside that reactor, what sort of quantity are we talking about radioactivity?
I've heard different numbers.
And now he's talking at the top of the building. At the top of the building, sorry.
Ranging from 2 to 15 reactor cores worth. No, 2 to about 8 reactor cores worth.
So if it can't be controlled, that's worst case scenario, 8 reactors worth of radioactivity.
Right. Right.
And it would be released into the atmosphere.
Radioactivity. By the way, the fact that this has happened at unit number 4 is understandable and is consistent with the theory that it really did dry out, because the fuel from the unit number 4 was most recently discharged, and therefore was the hottest, and therefore the water would have boiled off more rapidly.
Well, the reality of it was there was 4 buildings blowing up at one time. When you compare just one of Fukushima's reactors to Chernobyl, it's 100 Chernobyls. Each reactor core, there was around 9 at the top of each of the building, as he was alluding to. And here we go. Right, there was 4 buildings and 8 fuel pools were ejected into the environment, and they have zirconium cladding, so the cladding will burn when it's in oxygen. That's all it needs to ignite them. It'll burn at very high temperatures, 1800 degrees or so. And that will light up the pellets inside the cladding, the fuel pellets, uranium, plutonium, which are separated by zirconium, which is highly volatile when it's exposed to oxygen. The zirconium is what they used to use for the old cameras. You remember the ones with the great big, you see the old movies with the great big flash? Well, that was a glass sheet. There's a little hammer comes up and breaks it. And as soon as the oxygen rushes in, it flashes. And that's how they got the pictures back in the day. But the other side of that was they would poison all the furniture, all the people, the buildings that they used these flashes at. And they used them everywhere. I was like, why am I echoing? They had headphones on, stupid. Not echoing, but I can hear myself, so to speak. All right, that's why we got the headphones on, because we're going to do that again. So it shouldn't go too bad. Just a quick mention. This is this morning. This is a rough day, and. Alrighty, so we got the start motor let go. I did have a start motor let go. We got the replacement right there. I checked it, and I finally got I swapped it out. Right, I put the other start motor on. It's an old start motor. For the Skidoo, it's a second-hand old starting motor, a spare one. And I got a spare motor for it. I got a spare throttle body for it, etc., right? But anyway, I was changing the starting motor because I can't pull the cord without getting blowback from it. But anyway, I swapped out the starting motor, and I grabbed the cord and gave it a yank, and the cord yanked, right? I was like, sweet, I fixed it. I got it now, baby. And I couldn't get it to jump. So anyway, I have to pull the start motor off, put the other one back on, because I know that one will start up, because I can't leave the Skidoo in the shed, because I got a snowstorm coming tonight and tomorrow. So I don't know if it's going to work anyway. It hooks it up and doesn't work. And I was like, oh, crap. I see a little spark way underneath the wiring on the other side, on the inside, close to the wall. I was like, oh shit, solenoid, you gotta be kidding me. Turns out it's probably the solenoid that's giving me the problem. I don't know. I'm gonna pull I got an extra pull cord, I'm gonna pull that off and put it on the skidoo. Maybe tomorrow, but it's working now anyway. So the solenoid turned out, I think some of the wire, there's a piece of wire that actually bridged it or something. I don't know. Or something that bridged it anyway. Maybe there was a small draw and that's why I couldn't use the pull cord. But I'm going to have to change. I'm just rambling now a bit. But the idea was, it took me like 4 hours before, once I jumped it with the screwdriver, she runs really good, right? And my one of my vacuum lines was off, and so it was work that nightmare just to find that and resolve it. Well, I still haven't got it 100% resolved, but I got the solution the next time I go out and warms it up. I'm just going to put a couple of drips of crazy glue, and once it warms it up, and then pull out the vacuum line, put it around the thread, and poke it back in, because there's a nut there, so I can break it free. It's on metal, but that'll hold it for the time being, whatever. I busted up from that, though. That was a friggin' nightmare today. Here we go.
Sometimes the monitoring is done inside of the car, inside the vehicle.
At least I got it working now with the key.
But if you would measure indoors,
I'll explain this in a second.
It is 1/10 the level.
So let me start that again. Outside is high, so if you shelter in place is what they're talking about.
Sometimes the monitoring is done inside of the car, inside the vehicle. But if you would measure indoors, it is 1/10 the level. So if you are in an evacuation center, or if you are indoors in your house, it would be 1 microsievert per hour.
Meanwhile, it was 29 million atoms per square meter going on the ground minimum.
Inside.
Now she is just translator, right? She's only repeating what he says. But I sometimes wonder, because she seems to know a little bit extra in my book. She knows how to
the house, which is almost comparable to the level in Tokyo. So as long as you stay indoors, then there will be almost no harm.
So as long as you stay indoors, there'll be no harm. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. You're at a nuclear meltdown. Oh, as long as you stay indoors, it'll work itself out just right. That is one of the scariest statements I've ever heard, too. So they're acknowledging on one side, because what we're doing is just going to challenge any lies they tell, and just show you the ridiculousness of their lies, how many they tell. I'll cut them off on each lie. But there's a link below. You can watch the video uninterrupted.
But what I have said right now, especially for the foreigners and even for the Japanese majority.
This is the Foreign Press Club. He's the official spokesperson for the government. And we covered that in part 1.
Majority of the Japanese, they don't know about this. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're always exposed. Everyone is exposed wherever you live on Earth.
That's not what we're talking about there, sir. This is time before nuclear meltdowns, not bananas. He's going to pull the banana on us, this guy.
But everybody think in terms of whether you're exposed or not exposed. And the microsieverts, millisieverts, the terminology is also very difficult for you to understand.
Yeah, because you should be in backwards, physical atoms that you breathe in, and then your body attacks it with white blood cells for the rest of your life.
The relationship with an instantaneous radiation or cumulative radiation is unclear. And there is another handout. This is the Twitter that I just...
Man, she's got a bitter voice, hasn't she? Can you imagine being married to someone with that kind of attitude?
...started last night. This is only in Japanese, apologies, but this is a Twitter, and therefore the timing is the other way around. The first part is the latest, and the last page, just rip it off. That's there by mistake.
Now that's paper, exact copies is given out to the press club. None of those papers are going to have this picture on it, which came out the day before. So it was a handout photo from the government. Reactor 1, 2, 3, 4 to Tokyo Electric Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan, March the 15th, 2011. Now, any nuclear scientist that they brought that picture to would say, oh, you lost the reactor cores in all 4 buildings. The rest of it is going to go too if you don't get some water to reactor 5 and 6.
Please look at the 4th sheet. You can see the right-hand side down bottom. It says 4/5. Please find the 4th sheet at the bottom. This is my first Twitter, and it goes to the front part of the pages. So it says, what is radiation? It is transmissivity. It is particles and rays that has a high transmissivity. That is what I have started with my Twitter. This Twitter account, this is the radiation therapy team of Tokyo University Hospital. I am the team leader. In addition to medical doctors, our team includes the theoretical physics and the reactor engineers as well. There are physicists, not only medical scientists. So on the one hand, we are medical professions.
On the other hand, sadistic monsters.
In addition to that, there are physicists in our team.
So therefore, why don't you just show them that picture and say, well, we had nuclear meltdowns. It's going to be pretty bad. No, everybody's exposed to radiation. Don't worry about it.
In addition to that, there are physicists in our team. The scientists and engineers, reactor engineers are also included in our radiotherapy team. And we are all writing in...
So these are the people that are in charge of radiotherapy, folks. They're the people that are murdering your loved ones in the hospitals. That's one of the dirty, disgusting parasites right there, look. Evil, little, demented, sick and twisted, hateful scum.
This Twitter. So this was initiated only last evening, but very surprisingly, 1.3 million.
1.3 million.
No, correction. 130,000 access was seen in 24 hours. In day 1,
That was the media going there to find out what they're allowed to say.
4 hours, 130,000 persons has followed my Twitter. Again,
30,000 persons, 30,000 journalists who got a memo.
I'm sorry that this is only in the Japanese language, but if you read this Twitter, you can sort of understand what might be the potential health impact. In a nutshell, for the workers, yes, 250 milli is the cap, but...
There's nowhere on this site, I mean nowhere on that site, where you're going to walk away with 250 milli. Excuse me, just give me a second. I forgot to open up my crap window. Yes, we got a snowstorm coming in. We already got snow on the ground from the last one, which turned out a little bit better than, not as bad as they were saying. I screwed that up already, did I? Let me go back here. Right there. All right, so you had a tsunami run through the site. So you ripped the foundation, the infrastructures, the wires, telephone poles, out of everything. Reactor 1 blew up, spread radiation all over the site, like actual fuel. So your organs will melt no matter where you to on that site. As for Reactor 3, ejected the reactor cores and the fuel pools right out of the buildings. Right out of the buildings. Excuse me. You might have lost reactor common spent fuel pools. This is reactor 1 exploding. That's the fuel rods exploding. This is reactor 3. This is a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. This is ejecting the reactor core right out of the building. And the fuel pools now they're falling back down to earth, the big chunks. And what looks like smoke is the fuel igniting and replicating itself because the fuel has this bizarre property. It's truly a snuff machine for the species. You had 4 buildings do the same thing in a row. If, they put up these pictures, some of the official pictures that were released. You see the reactor 3, that was the last one that exploded I showed you. At the top of the building were 2 fuel pools. They don't have any repositories anywhere on the planet, let alone in Japan. And then they had used salt water on the reactors too, which created a sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. The infrastructure was completely destroyed. Once the tsunami done its thing, what was left behind was there was nothing functional, right? Like, you got to appreciate when that came through. Well, like, when you look at these 2 pictures in 2012, these were supposed to be 190-foot buildings with the reactor core and the fuel pools at the top of the buildings. You want to see this picture? I'll get it out of the way. In case you want to grab a screen capture, and you should. And if you haven't got one, you were making a mistake. You should actually print it out. Right? If you go find better pictures, use them. But at least get this one and print it out. If you got a printer, print it out. And when somebody says to you, have it wherever you're hanging out, somebody says, don't worry about Fukushima. Say, where's the fuel pool there, weirdo? Right, the country went through a wood chipper. Like, it's the radiation, you had to abandon all these communities that are still abandoned in the day. And places that are not, that they went back into, it shows you why you can't trust the nuclear industry, that they've done stuff like that. And you picked up 30 million one-ton bags. This is one of 150,000 sites in 2015. This was the homeless and the destitute. These are 1 ton, 2,200 pound, that are only meant to last a couple of years at most. These are, minimum qualification was 100,000 atoms, a kilogram of gamma, and cesium-137 in particular. They refused to look for the other isotopes. Obviously, they didn't look for the cesium. You're talking about all of this material after the tsunami was buried in high-level radioactive fallout from the fuel particulates that are splitting atoms. They burnt that in incinerators. They grind it up, took all across the country to the major incinerators. And burnt it in the incinerators. I know there's one in Tokyo where 3 employees had heart attacks on the same day. Heart attacks from burning radioactive fallout in the incinerator. The industry is just completely lunatic. It's just a bunch of shit for brains.
As I said, they are prepared that there is going to be a higher risk for cancer incidents in the future for the workers on the site. Therefore, I don't know any other...
Crazy lies these people tell us. And the problem is, if you try to do what I'm doing and challenge every lie that you can stomach, that's not the one. It's just as well, isn't it? Just think with that for 1 second. I grabbed that. I'll go backwards. There was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. 865,000 cancers in the first year. In July, they had 50,000 tons of sludge, sediment from the water filtration facilities, the water treatment facilities, that they couldn't get rid of. 50,000 one-ton bags in July 2011. So March, April, July. 50,000. So the water pipes were completely radioactive at this stage. Everybody's tap, all the clothes and all the towels they use in the bathrooms are going to be incredibly radioactive.
Language, but this is like a suicide fighter in wars. But for the general resident,
same time, the people at the plant are suicide fighters in a war.
For the general public, the non-radiological workers, basically, definitely, there will be no health impact on the general residents. At the 3 Mile Island in the USA, there was such a panic, and
3 Mile Island was a small reactor. This was 4 reactors in a row melting down.
30 years for the general public, the non-radiological workers.
Play that again 1 second.
Basically, definitely, there will be no health impact.
There was 1 million atoms in just one study on the west coast of Canada, United States, on the ground per square meter. So what that meant, that's disposition, that's radioactive fallout they're talking about.
30 years in the US, new nuclear plants could not be constructed. That was the reason behind. So at the 3 miles, after all, the local residents did not suffer from any negative health impact. The cancer incidence did not rise.
Yeah, there was cancer clusters. We actually got models of the areas where there were cancer clusters. It came out after 3 Mile Island. That's a despicable lie, by the way. It came out after 3 Mile Island. After 3 Mile Island. Searching. Nothing. Oh, I put in 3 instead of 3. I mean, I was looking for that study where they said there was 2 million people got irradiated, but it was equal to watching color television for an extra year. This is a plume that showed a spike in cancer.
Here's the 3 Mile Islands, Susquehanna River, Harrisburg, up here. So these are the estimates from the dosimetrists under the funding with the court order that I showed previously of where the plumes went. And the heaviest plumes are in the darkest red to the northwest. And then there's some to the northeast and a little bit to the southeast. But there are other areas that are very, very low. And the numbers, you may not be able to see this in the back, but the green, this green is 0. And the very darkest red goes up some of those tracts. The highest tract is relative to 0, 1,666 units. So there's quite a range according to the scale that they use.
Right, the cancer clusters, the dogs were left behind. People left their windows and doors open, so their houses were incredibly contaminated. But the dogs were found dead and blind from the radiation fallout from 3 Mile Island.
Around 3 miles. So that is my feeling that it will be the same as the 3 Mile Islands.
Now this was that's his feelings, it'll be the same, but this is what it looked like. 3 Mile Island is not equal to 100 of those buildings, either one of these buildings. If you had 3 Mile Island was brutal too, don't get me wrong, but these had 3 decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings were gone too. It's very dishonest.
Of course, when it comes to nuclear administration in Japan, the nuclear business, it is true that it has suffered irreversible damage. However, in terms of health of the general public of the Japanese residents, there is no health impact.
Of course, no, well, in the first year it was 860. Typical cancers like there's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. The reason they told people to stay in their houses is because there was death plumes coming through. Now, MIT's presentation right after Fukushima, or Harvard University rather, you'll find them in my playlist. They acknowledged was at 10 sieverts per hour in the plume that was going through these communities. This is why people were sheltering in place. And they didn't want to find people dead in the streets full of radiation because that was by industry.
It is exactly 30 minutes, so I would like to conclude my initial comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the rest of the time, I would like to accept questions. And we will limit the questions only for the foreign press. So please raise your hand, and if you are designated, please use the portable microphone. And please limit yourself to just one question each for the first round. Yes, please. From Bloomberg News, my name is Matsuyama. Doctor, you have mentioned about the workers. So if you could give us more of a detail for the workers working in the plant. What kind of protective gear and protective the treatments as well as medicine are given to them? And what may be the intervals of their work operation? How many minutes are they allowed to work? No, just one question each. If there is a remainder time later. Now, if you could also mention whether there is any special medical team. I am not myself directly involved in the nuclear power plant operation, but I do have some knowledge. So what may be the protective gear, or is there any medical team ready? Most probably there will be no medical team at the present. Now, for the protective gear, perhaps the company may have given them for their own the sense of security. but basically it may not be that protective. Now, how many minutes? I mentioned earlier that initially it was 100 milli, but right now the maximum level is being raised to 250 milli. And on a real-time basis, monitoring is being done. That is to say, the cumulative the radiation, the dose. So they have set the limit for taking an analogy of the bathtub, to what extent the hot water could be accumulated at the level of the water. So as the time passes, they will change. Now, what about the medicine? Almost, most probably they had to do. They would have been given iodine. When the nuclear...
That's pretty rich. So you're at a nuclear meltdown, they're going to give you iodine, are they? These people are insane. You're not working there, first off, on that day, or the next day, or the day after, or the week after, or the month after, because Medusa's going off in all directions. Probably reactor common spin fuel pool across the street from reactor 4 Medusas, possible reactor 6. Like I showed you at the beginning, why where the official story is it looks like this instead of like that. This is 2019. They're talking about reactor 3. Then once reactor 3 to your left, the fuel pool would be 150 feet above the stump you're looking at. The first portion of the fuel from one of the damaged fuel reactors was transferred to the common spin fuel pool, is what they were talking about. This is madness. Like they picked up 30 million one-ton bags for
power plants when there is a dispersal of the radioactive materials, radiations, and it is just like pollens, to take the analogy. The nuclear power plant is just like a gigantic cedar tree. And
oh my God. What did he say? Go backwards here.
Power plants when there is a dispersal of
when there is a dispersal,
the radioactive materials, radiations,
radioactive fallout,
and it is just like pollens.
So it's like pollen. Excuse me, I apologize. To tell so many lies, how are you supposed to get through the video if you're going to challenge the lies? See? If you didn't tell so many lies, we would have finished this after the first hour. My apologies. Here we go. Think about how to follow. This is 20 days in. So the video was done day 5. This is day 20. This is plutonium covering your planet. But there's many. I'll show you another one. That's plutonium-239 covering the planet in 20 days. This is Neptunium-239 covering the planet in the same days, in 20 days. The Neptunium is 20 days, 21 days. The Neptunium-239 decays to Plutonium-239, which has a 24,000-year half-life. But Neptunium has a 2.5-day half-life. So every 2 days, it decays by 50% to a different isotope. It does that 10 times, but plutonium takes 24,000 years before it decays to the next one. And plutonium killed all the animals in all the experiments.
To take the analogy, the nuclear power plant is just like a gigantic cedar tree, and the pollen will be dispersed from the tree.
No. again, you blew up fuel pools, reactor cores, and the fuel is kept underwater because it's splitting atoms. That's how they boil water to power millions of homes and businesses. And this just keeps replicating itself. Pollen doesn't replicate itself. And pollen is inert. It's not pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. And that particular attribute, there's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger can defend against it. Think of a snowstorm. And because it's splitting the atoms every second in two, you aerosol this material, but that stuff is splitting atoms. It never stops every second. So it looks like this. And I'll give you a countdown to 10 days right here. And then 20 days is coming up. This will be 20 days right about here. And so this thing is replicating itself constantly because it's a plume, and each element, let's do that again. Think of this as a snowstorm coming out of Japan. And you can see it's a big snowstorm. Here comes the snow. This is 10 days in of snowstorm. It never stops snowing. The snow never melts or goes away. And it continuously replicates itself forever and ever and ever. After a few days, you can't see the top of your house anymore. Then you would get it, right? Well, this is what radiation does. It covers the whole planet. So pollen doesn't have that attribute. There's nothing else on the planet with that particular attribute. And the emissions, the so-called invisible snowstorm, it attacks everything with replicating cells. Now, it does that by pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. And your body reacts to that violently by producing white blood cells to repair the damage. And you can't keep up with it. You have gammas and alphas, neutrons and betas. All of them are pulsing their own energies, and they don't mingle with each other. So in other words, cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet. If it hits an alpha, gamma, beta, it'll hit each other, they'll change direction, almost at the speed of light, coming in almost the speed of light, almost the speed of light, they hit each other, they change direction. That effect is called an X-ray, but it's a very cumulative, it's a full body X-ray for all the species, and the biota, and the fungus, and the bacteria. And so this guy should be in jail for the rest of his life.
But the pollen itself will not cause the allergy. But in this case, it would not cause an allergy, but it would go through your human body. It is a radiation.
No, well, you can breathe it in too. You can drink, your food becomes poison, your water becomes poison. And it pulses energy every second, almost at the speed of light.
And there are different types of pollen, to take the analogy. It would be the iodine, which would have the most acute effect.
No, the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is a curium isotope, not iodine. Now, iodine is brutal. It's brutal. But the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods I'll cover both of those, actually. What a piece of shit to tell so many lies, eh? Fucker. Creates all this fucking work for me. Piece of shit. Sorry, I get carried away sometimes. Calm down there, Charlie. So this was a study, not this one, that one comes up after, this one here. Toxicity of inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs. So 144 beagle dogs, puppies, and they died of tumors within 5 years. So tumors of lung, skeleton, liver occurred beginning about 3 years after the exposures. Bone tumors In 93 dogs were the most common cause of death, bone tumors. Out of 144, 93 dogs, beagle dogs, the big nose, they don't bite, they want to be petted, that's why they use them, because they're cowards. And so you get typically 3 tumors. And tumors in the 3 organs often occurred in the same animal were competing causes of death. There's a terrible way to die, bone tumors, and those who go through that with their loved ones or themselves or their friends or their families, my heart goes out to you. Finding in the dogs suggests similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans. Humans, it was discovered, kidneys are at least 50 times less efficient than an animal kidney at removing the plutonium. So you're 50 times more likely to die than the dog. Not 50%, but 50 times. Okay. Curium isotopes, this is Loveless Respiratory Research Institute, this is the United States government, the Navy in particular research facility. Curium isotopes are the major byproducts in the radiated nuclear fuel. This is the same author, Dr. Raymond Gilmedi. That's what he does for a living. He kills beagle dogs and beagle puppies. So curium isotopes are the major byproduct in the radioactive fuel rod, and curium isotope requires lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium, and plutonium killed all the dogs. So when he talks about iodine is real, and it's created in incredible amounts. 20,000 particles fell on Canada, United States. This was a study out of British Columbia, Canada. And this was a study out of Ottawa, Canada, of 20 million atoms. 220 million atoms, iodine-129 per liter, which is 2 separate studies. So the 20 million particles, they're splitting atoms of radioactive iodine-131 per liter. These are catastrophic numbers. Iodine-131 is incredibly effective ionizing, radiating thyroid glands of all the species, not just humans. Every species. Nothing escapes them. If you've got a thyroid, it's brutal to, it's extremely brutal to the species compared to humans. We're at the top of the food chain. There's 10 times more iodine-132 produced for every iodine-131 and 30 times more iodine-133 for every iodine-131, 31 times more iodine-129 for every iodine-131 produced. The iodine-132 and 133 are 9 times more effective than the iodine-131 is at ionizing, radiating, and reckon. What you're talking about, right, with that study is the thyroid glands of every species saturated, every human, every species. So all the developing species, which reproduce yearly, are not reproducing and become sterilized after a short while. They're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives. And when the babies are born of each species in humans, their development is now dictated by mutated radioactive hormones. Now, in order to have these particular studies and attributes, and then you have a bone seeker like plutonium, which is neptunium-239 decays to plutonium after 2.5 days. So 25 days later is all plutonium. That's 20 days in, right? So 4 days after this study, this will convert to plutonium-239, which killed all the animals in all the studies. And the curium isotopes, which are the biggest byproduct, so there was a lot more curium than there was of 131 and 129. There was a significant more curium isotopes. These are insane numbers. These are numbers nobody has ever postulated pre-Fukushima. And then curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker. And the half-life of curium-244, I can't remember off the top of my head. It's 5,000 years, 6,000 years. Just give me a second, I'll look it up. I hate it when I can't remember. And I don't really got an excuse for not remembering. I'm at this all the time. I just think as my brain is trying to make room. Because let me go backwards. I was out working on the skidoo today. And freezing, right? I just hated every second of it. But it's got to get done because we're going to get a snowstorm tonight and I won't be able to. I'm doing it in the hopes I can go out and do research. But because the industry's got everybody turned against me, I'm the bad man. Everybody fucking hates me. I always got to rise above it. I've been under siege for so long now, it's normal. There's nothing normal about it. You know, I'm jealous of people who can have a normal day or not targeted like I am all the time. Curium isotopes. Bring it on the bigger screen, maybe that'll... Oh. Curium, I can't even remember. See, I should know exactly where that's not it there. I should know chromium, and I should know where it's too. Where knows who used it. I thought this model was curium. I must have... Oh. I can't see. Oh, there it is. CM. So 244. And it's not just going to be 244, right? It has a half-life of 18 years. And its next decay is 240 plutonium. That has a half-life of 6,000 years. Yeah, there you go. So it decays, so 60,000 years before it decays away. 60,000 plus 180. So 60,000 years. So, but this is 244 is extremely highly energetic, right? You need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. And so we're still not to the first decay. It's the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods, not iodines, even though they're incredibly plentiful, incredibly harmful, and they went worldwide immediately. As I showed you, the cesium-137 model is the same as any other model, where all the models, the Neptunium model covers the whole planet, the plutonium model covers the whole planet. I screwed up. I go back up. Up. If I triple click, it'll boot me to the bottom of the page. We're almost back. We are back. And same thing as the cesium, shoot ahead to 20 days or something. So this is 20 days right here of radioactive fallout of cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. This is the French government, the government itself, France's IRSN or something. Let's try skidoos again. Start motors. Ah! I'm out there working on that one. I should be working on this. Whatever. Thank God I'm not dear, is all I can say. But whoever's dear, they're not educated. They're the victims.
That is because for the nuclear power plant, there is a radiative iodide. And if it invades the human body, the iodine is being used in the human body as the thyroid hormone. You have to have an iodine in your body in order to create or produce the thyroid hormones. But for the thyroid, if the iodine is in a shortage,
like if you're trying to invent a makeup or a perfume or whatever that has these attributes, you'll never get a license. But nuclear, the Senate, the parliaments, the diets don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. It's not illegal to murder you with radiation.
That is because for the nuclear power plant, there is a radiative iodide. And if it invades the human body, the iodine is being used in the human body as the thyroid hormone. You have to have an iodine in your body in order to create or produce the thyroid.
You got to say natural when you're doing that, by the way, not just keep conflating.
Thyroid hormones.
It's disgusting.
But for the thyroid, if the iodine is in a shortage,
so
if it is iodine hungry situation.
So this is filler, and this is the same bullshit you've been listening to for, at that point, 70 years, right? You're worried about curium, you're worried about uranium, you're worried about plutonium and americium, neptunium and strontium, and iodines, 131, 132, 133, 139.
Then when a radiative iodine comes in from the outside, it would eat up readily, voraciously, meaning that there will be concentration of a radioactive iodine in the thyroid. So, when it is in an iodine-rich situation already, when the radioactive iodine comes in from the outside, it is enough. You don't need any more. So, if you have, for the preventive measure, have a stable iodine being taken in advance, that would be sufficient as a protection. So I'm sure the workers have been given such a stable iodine.
So unless you got iodine, you got your iodine and got your paper suit, let's roll, baby. Sadistic little demon. He's like, yes, it's all coming together now. And I got to survive another 22 minutes so I can go back to my... I don't even want to think about what he does in his spare time. What a sick and twisted and demented little creature that one turned out to be. That one is so good, I got to label that one for further abuse here. If you take iodine, they'll be just fine. Because I can, as I'm clipping this video, I can take the clip and label it at the same time, right in the session itself.
I mentioned earlier about the 3 Mile Island incident,
which was a single reactor. It was a small reactor. Japan was massive reactors. There was 4 of them blew up at the one time. It was different. Let me keep her going.
I mentioned earlier about the 3 Mile Island incident. The cancer that has increased in case of the Chernobyl, especially for the pediatric the cancer. 100% of the 60-year-old the women in the United States, if you have made a test for the traffic accidents, the women in their 60s, they had that there was at a higher level of the thyroid the cancer. So, with the
That's crazy. Hang on. He's a really twisted little freak, isn't he? That's a twisted little freak, that guy. It's so complicated, man. I wanted to grab that picture we were using. Here we go. That one there. Hard case. I can honestly say I disrespect these people. Well, it's hard to appreciate how much I disrespect them. Calling these people lunatics is the best thing you can do. There we go. We're back in business. I just want to talk about this for 1 second. So, this study came out 2024. This was meant to put to rest the dangers of what Fukushima was in 2024. And so the assessment of individual external exposure, and this meant whether you're going to get compensation or not if you're in that environment, if you're from that country, if you were affected or lost your communities or your homes or your businesses because of radiation. This was the study they used to quantify, not paying you anything. Assessment of individual external exposures. These were the people that wrote the study. Declaration of competing interest. The authors declared they have no known competing financial interest or personal relationship could have appeared to influence the work reported in the paper. So it's independent. So when I put in internal into the search of the page, I got nothing, zero. No, you can see no matches up there. I kind of cut it off. But anyway, when I put in external, top of the page was 46. 46. This one, what one? External, yeah. Also, natural radiation. Look at natural radiation. Really important study for everybody. Should have a copy of this ideally. Natural radiation, natural, not man-made. It's a nuclear wasteland. And we're only looking for external. And you can see all the focus on external doses. It was showing you, and I'll get into the picture for a second. What you're looking at is just the ultimate betrayal of these academics. They're very well dressed. They got $3,000 glasses on. Their kids are taking every course out there, music and sports, and they're going on family vacations. And they do it by stabbing everybody else in the back for the nuclear industry. External. And yearly individual external exposure doses in millisieverts a year. 2 for a farmer and 2 for the office worker. Okuma was 8. Fukushima and Okuma are on each side of the nuclear plant itself. They're actually part of the nuclear plant, those communities. It's a pretty frightening reality check, though, isn't it, to see it? Predict individual external exposure dose was validated. Individual external exposures. The reality of it was you picked up 30 million one-ton bags. 30 million, and that's, you can see why.
I mentioned earlier about 3 Mile Island incident.
Sorry, that's not the one.
Pediatric the cancer, the thyroid cancer, they're being raised.
So it's so insane the way he's framing everything. It's really interesting.
The case of the Chernobyl the incident. The iodine exists in a larger quantity in the seagrass and the Japanese the people the loves the kelps. So if you take the stable iodine in advance for protection, that would work as a protection for the workers.
I'm sorry. As you take the iodine, you don't have to worry about a nuclear meltdown. No, you took your iodine, you got your paper suit, yeah, okay, well, go over there and stand up and hold this stick up in the air. A little closer. Okay, can somebody send the remote control backhoe over there and pick up that homeless guy? For the other ones to get here, the other Fukushima 50. The Fukushima 50 are homeless people he sent in when he dropped dead. Give us another Fukushima 50.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Nakagawa, and we are quite reassured to see that we don't have anything to worry in Tokyo. But nevertheless, some people have been saying such as...
Thank you for your explanation. We don't have anything to worry. Will I see you at the sushi bar tonight or not? There's some wicked people, man, and the nuclear industry has the majority.
The French embassy that there was some major risk here in Tokyo, so I don't know where they got this.
Why is their microphones always so much louder for the foreign press?
Information. Yes.
His translator's not working, is it?
Yes, Joël Lejean, RTL France. We welcome your statement about the fact that we don't have anything to worry about.
We welcome your statement. Now, for France's model was the yellow one, with 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air covering the whole planet at 31 days.
The situation in Tokyo right now. Nevertheless, some people in the press have mentioned some comments made by the French embassy saying there were huge risks, and actually 3/4 of our population has left Tokyo right now, so we are wondering if it's time for them to come back. But
3/4 of the French have left Tokyo.
What would you say?
Tokyo was 240 kilometers away. That's incredible.
Think about the future based on what's happening right now in Fukushima and maybe in other reactors in other parts, Odagawa, Tokai, or whatever. What would happen if major leakage happen, meltdown, whatever happen in these areas? Do we?
What would happen if it happens? If it happens, like clearly. This is what had happened. This was on the 15th. The press conference is on the 16th. So press conference is the day after. I just wanted to grab that picture and put it there so you can
have something to fear in the month ahead. Can we still live in Tokyo?
Can you still live in Tokyo? That's wonderful. Look at him, he's almost blushing. Should I talk about bananas or?
Thank you for the question. So the containment vessel, whether it is going to melt down, a meltdown of the containment, a total meltdown of the containment vessel, that possibility is not zero. However, there is always a risk in the world, so you cannot say that the risk is zero, but I would say it's almost nil.
Okay, well, you ejected the reactor core right out of the buildings. Right? Maniacs, boy. This is what happened 2 days before. He says nil. It can't happen. So everybody else is clearly wrong.
Negligible. What the French embassy people said, I won't force them to return right now to Tokyo, but very soon, in the very near future, I sincerely hope that the French embassy staff will...
I wouldn't force them to return to Tokyo right now.
Negligible. What the French embassy people said, I won't force them to return right now to Tokyo, but very soon, in the very near future, I sincerely hope that the French embassy staff will all return to Tokyo. I can't say that the risk is zero. I can't say that, but that is because...
What's that, I wonder?
I can't say what percentage. I'm not an expert in that area, but I am not afraid that there will be such a health issue in Tokyo. After 20 years, when we reflect back on this incident, number one, regarding the nuclear administration of Japan, we will see a recession in terms of nuclear administration and nuclear industry. And because of this incident, the health impact onto the general public would have been zero. That is what we shall find out in 20 years. That is my personal observation. Thank you.
So his personal observations, in 20 years, there would be no adverse side effects whatsoever, nothing. And despite that, picture came out the day before. Should somebody find him and sue him? There were so many of these people. It was madness. You're 15 years down the road and all the species are emaciated, severe. It's just, sometimes it bothers me when I see these academics like this, and I apologize. Like this was on the 12th, and this was the 14th. This is 2 days before he done that press conference. His job is to cut everybody's throat. That's his job. His job is to be a scumbag. To be a lowest form of life. The nuclear industry has thousands of these people. There were so many jealous people out there that day.
Okay. Michael. もし
Now, about the containment vessels, what would happen when and if the meltdown occurs? In Tokyo, most probably 100 millisievert on a cumulative basis may be the dose to be found in Tokyo. So carcinogenicity level may go up. But I would say that the possibility of that is quite low.
Hang on. Hang on. I know I got it there somewhere. Yeah, there's some of it. Radiation around Fukushima, this is the 14, 2 days before, nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably and hair can be stripped from their bodies. This was 2 days before the press conference. The air in Tokyo, right away, was 270 times more contaminated with just the gamma, cesium-137, and global weapons follow peak. So if that's the only one they're acknowledging, but if you're only acknowledging that one, then so like the garbage is too radioactive to get rid of it. The ashes, the sewage is too radioactive, even when it's dehydrated, to get rid of it. Can't get rid of water from the water filtration facilities because it's too radioactive to get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities, water reclamation facilities, the sewage facilities. Over 60 million Japanese were denied the ability to try to protect themselves by this horrific, despicable, hateful scum. This worthless human. It shocks me how evil these people actually are sometimes. There we go.
Dr. Vivek Pinto, Dainik Bhaskar, India, read by 1 million people. Thank you, Dr. Nakagawa. According to your handout here, you're a professional radiologist.
130,000. 130,000.
Oh, evacuation, isn't it? You're talking about 130,000?
May I go ahead, Dr. Nakagawa? According to the handout, you're a professional radiologist. My question is, what are the main radionuclides which are present in the radiation release? 133 cesium, strontium-90, radioactive iodine, plutonium, or uranium? Thank you.
Ooh, he's gonna. That's you put him on the spot. That's a cool.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
You don't have to repeat. I have to say, no one knows. No one knows at this moment.
Why was he hiding? He does this a lot. He hides his face. Smoke.
Which radioactive substance was large? Because it's not easy to measure and to differentiate at this.
It's 100% easy to measure. It was 150 miles away, or 150 miles away was as radioactive as it was at ground zero, which was where humans were vomiting uncontrollably. And Tokyo was 270 times more contaminated than the global weapons failure peak. It came out, and no big surprise.
You cannot differentiate so easily. You are measuring radioactivity, so the nuclide is not measured. Which element at what percentage is not measured at this moment? Distinction between those substances you mentioned is difficult. Having said that, now theoretically you can surmise.
Right, that was a he just played a get out of jail free card for later, right? A plausible deniability card.
Theoretically, because I'm a medical profession, in terms of health impact, the most important is iodine. That is the largest concern. Iodine is the most concern out of all the substances you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a nice day. Was that a setup, I wonder? I gotta put that in my shit pile and check it later.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Business Times. Could you clarify what you've just said? In a worst-case scenario, if there were a meltdown of the containment vessel, I think you said 100 millisieverts cumulatively. What do you mean by that? I mean, these figures that we have here, how far would they be likely to rise in the worst-case scenario?
Like when you're talking about radioactive fallout, like Tokyo is 240 kilometers away, you're talking about physical atoms, isotopes. The best way to think of it is like a snowflake that attacks everything in your body, every species, with energy. And there's so much of it, it would look like snow, but except it'd be like a snowstorm, like we're going to get in a few hours. We're on to it. It's probably snowing right now, actually. It was supposed to start about an hour before I went. No, it started right around when I went live. I went live a little early because I got to get up early and see if I can see if I can get it on the screw, and also to see if how bad it is. Do I need to get out and start snow blowing, or get out with the plow, or boat oven, or do I need to clear a spot? But if the plows are not out, I won't, consider taking off, because any tracks will be fresh that I can find out on the trail here. We're almost in a position now. We got to get the kinks out of it, but we're almost in a position where the snow is going to stick around.
Well, nothing is certain. Nothing is really known yet. But roughly speaking.
Well, yeah, everything was known. They also have the Speedy model. They made over 5,500 in the first month. So by this point, they've already made hundreds of models because the reactors were blowing up. It makes models.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Business Times. Could you clarify what you've just said? In a worst-case scenario, if there were a meltdown of the vessel...
I screwed up.
Millisievert would be the level.
And iodine would be your biggest enemy. Man. Your biggest enemy is the curium isotopes. I showed you all of that earlier. I broke it up really good for you, and why, and plutonium, and why. Also, plutonium brutal. Iodine's brutal. Cesium brutal. Iodine 131, 132, 133, 129. Yeah, this is a never-ending nightmare, forever and ever and ever.
But I cannot say for certain, because it would depend upon to what extent the containment vessel is destroyed. But then, having said that...
Well, they had already seen Reactor 3 and Reactor 1 and Reactor 3 ejector reactor cores. Right, this wasn't up for debate anymore in the academic world. And on the day before, every academic seen that understood the entire inventories of 30 years for 4 reactor buildings were now gone. Around 36 reactor cores were now unleashed upon our planet.
Is it a dose that would invite the deaths of people? It is in sievelts, from 2 sievelts and 4, or the half, and the 7 sievelt would mean everyone would die. It is not in that order at all. And most probably it would be less than 100 millisievert. I don't think that anyone will be able to give you a much clearer picture.
I don't think anybody will be able to give you a clearer picture. He didn't even show you this picture. He would have had that on a placard. If I was there, you would have that on a placard, and you would hold it up every time and say, well, we lost around 18 reactor cores in those 2 buildings.
Right now.
I mean, there's so many of these.
The next question, the worst possible scenario. Probably you are obsessed with the worst possible scenario, but preparing is not bad, but there is an obsession with the worst possible scenario, and in life there are many scenarios, so yeah, you should not be too much obsessed with the worst scenario. Yes, please, the gentleman.
You should not be obsessed too much with the worst scenario, which clearly was playing out. Right? Just one of these is the worst case scenario. You had 4 in a row. 4.
My friend? So, from Daiken. Radiation,
the volume, hopefully.
as you mentioned, irradiates from food, and would there be residues? Would there be residues?
Yeah, and that's a word we heard a lot of, isn't it? Residue? That's one of their famous words. Nuclear has its own language. Residue is not one of them.
Residual radiation.
It pulses energy sometimes for millions of years. So if you want to put confusion out there, you don't explain that facet.
As I mentioned, there are radioactive materials that we're talking about. It's radioactive. When I say radioactive, it means that there is a radiation which is transmissive. It passes through your body. It damages DNAs inside our body.
Pulses through your bodies. It wrecks your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, and everything
are
else.
beams and rays, and radioactive substances emits such rays. I mean, we are all exposed to the rays, I said, but there is a higher...
Right, so, but natural stuff doesn't accumulate. It doesn't cause adverse side effects. Your body doesn't attack natural radiation with white blood cells. Right, you can't conflate them. Under any circumstances, there's no acceptable scenario where you would put two of them in the same equation.
Radiation. It's a pollen. It's like pollen, I said.
It's not like the word pollen is meant to disenfranchise you from understanding any kind of... It's like you didn't pick up 30 million one-ton bags of natural radiation. That was man-made radiation.
In other words, take it the other way around. How can you avoid being exposed to pollen or radiation?
So you just keep throwing that in the big turd in the punch bowl, pollen.
Ask the question in that way. You should stay indoors because there are...
You shouldn't be within 100 miles of a nuclear plant. And the reason is so you have lots of time to run away.
Pollen outside your home. Therefore, if you stay inside your house, there will be less pollen. However, there will be no less, it would not be less, but it would be 10% indoors rather than outdoors. You can't block everything, but it's transmissive, as I said. Therefore, the radiation outside the house could permeate and affect you, even if you stay indoors. However, the amount of pollen, in terms of the...
Man, these people are brutal.
In other words, take it the other way around. How can you avoid being exposed to pollen?
Oh, man. Isn't that something? That's such a despicable thing to do.
The amount of pollen would be much less, and therefore radiation would be much less if you stayed indoors. Now, food. If it adheres to food, let's say food was outside. Let's say there's persimmon fruit outside, and eating the persimmon would not be good because obviously there will be pollen on the fruit, and if you eat that, it would not be good. Even inside the house,
there would be radiation on the food, pollen. There would be isotopes on the food. There would be...
let's say there was an apple,
horrific.
And although at a lower level, there will be pollen. If you eat the apple with pollen, it will be internal radiation from inside your body. And that should be avoided. So you should be careful. You should cover the food with something, a physical sheet to cover the food. Have I responded to your question?
So cover the food in your house with sheets so the radiation doesn't land on it because you're... I'm lost for words at this stage.
But it's only one question, please.
Yes, please. The next person, please. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm from Singapore Press. My name is Hu, the correspondent. What I would like to know is, at the very minimum, everybody is panicking. For example, if you are in Tokyo, but then, in order to prevent any heat exposure, can you wear the mask, and would that be sufficient enough? What about the clothes that you wear when you go home? For the radiation exposure, there are two different types: the external exposure and the internal exposure. The external meaning that the radiation attached to your clothes from outside, for example. Then you take off your clothes or you take a shower. You will be able to wash off.
Sorry, I didn't have
for instance, the analogy of pollen, meaning that you wash off the pollen on your clothes as well as on your body.
You can't wash radiation out of your clothing or your food. Obviously, you can wash some of it, but you shouldn't. You need to get rid of it. Don't use it. You got to throw that clothing away.
And the
particularly, because you're talking about particulates that are splitting atoms that are landing on people and in the properties in their communities.
That you have taken off.
Vehicles.
Or you the wood, the sort of they try to hit it and they try to pat it over so that all the pollens the wood to be removed. You would
radioactive fallout. Don't call it radioactive fallout because it's like a crime.
Shake it so that the radiation can be removed. And I don't think you would see those kind of people in Tokyo, but
there was radioactive pollen because the pollen becomes radioactive, right? It was at absurd numbers. So, like, right away, the air samples in Tokyo were 270 times more than weapons fallout. But just give me a second. Let me just find some examples of what the numbers were like. And like the garbage was too radioactive to get rid of, and the incinerators, they burn them anyway. You can't destroy radioactive fallout by burning it in the incinerators. You're just going to liberate it, release it back into the environment where it's going to continue forever and ever and ever to incredible harm. Just bear with me here. There were so many different ways, but they were burning it. They were just burning it everywhere. Debris from Fukushima, near Fukushima, is being ground up and burned in other parts of Japan. Disposal of the quake debris begins in Tokyo. Will continue, radiation fears among the residents will continue to burn over £1 billion for years and years. They found plutonium in every sample. It's everywhere on paved surfaces. The garbage is too radioactive. The ash is too radioactive to get rid of. Is Japan trying to contaminate every region of Japan by burning the radioactive debris? If everyone is contaminated in a relative sense, nobody is. Incinerating radioactive material could contaminate the environment. Sewage is too radioactive to get rid of. The water from the filtration facility is too radioactive to get rid of. They're burning the debris all over Japan. They done everything evil you can imagine. They took whatever the scenario was. They said, well, what's the most evilest way to deal with it? They done that. Japan is simply dumping the nuclear waste into the ocean. Massive radioactive waste buildup. People were just digging up topsoil and dumping it in the parks from their own properties. Tokyo official blast parents who want kids to avoid ingesting the radiation at school. The official said it's important to share the pain. Surge in radioactive cesium causes incinerators near Tokyo to shut down. That was the first time, because that's the first time they ever had any detectors. Well, the idea was to go a bit early, but I'm still going.
For example,
I want to get through this video, because otherwise...
If you are in the radius of 20 kilometers from Fukushima nuclear plant, I mentioned that the 2 to 220 microsievert per hour, which is quite high. I mentioned that indoors it is 1/10. So if you go outside, you should try to not to have an intake of radiation. You will be able to wash off what have been attached from the outside. So if you go outdoors, you have to wear masks.
Like these, you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. How the fuck is a mask going to filter that? put 200 million isotopes ahead of a needle, you can't see it, but one of them give you a cancer, a heart problem, a liver problem, a lung problem, a respiratory
For example, if you are in the radius of 20 kilometers from Fukushima nuclear plant, I mentioned that the 2 to 220 microsievert per hour, which is quite high. I mentioned that indoors it is 1/10. So if you go outside, you should try to not to have an intake of radiation. You will be able to wash off what have been attached from the outside. So if you go out,
you can't wash it off. You can wash some of it off, clearly. Like, the first thing you want to do is shave your eyebrows and your head, all the hair on your body, actually. Hard case. We're going to have to pick it up again because you told so many lies. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm starting to rush, so to speak, right? Because we're at 2 hours. And I had a rough day. Like a horrible day. I succeeded. It's been a rough, survived Christmas, survived the New Year, the beginning of the New Year. There's always chaos no matter where you go. And here we go. We're in 2026. We're off to a good start doing this kind of material. We're going to have to come back and finish him off. He's still got 10 minutes of him left to go. What was it when I started off? 30 minutes or something was left? We made it through 20 minutes of his video. It took us 2 hours to flush out the lies. He's prolific, eh? Oh, I know, he's just some hard case. Should nuclear power be banned to save the whales, the insects, the birds, the mammals, the water, and the earth from being poisoned? This is an important video, man. That was... So they took one of the worst humans imaginable, whose job is to radiate people at hospitals and universities. That's his job. He does radiation therapy. He's an expert in radiation therapy. And if I show you the studies on radiation therapy, you might never go to a hospital again. You certainly won't look at them the same again. Let me see. We're going to pick up on him. Let me get back to the normal one. We're going to pick up on him. I don't know if we're going to finish it on the next show or not. Well, yeah, if it does. I got a whole bunch of shows packaged up because I don't stop working, right? James had put out a Lost Queen conch. There's links below his video. But it shows you the bizarreness of the nuclear industry. And they'll actually go out and spend $1 million to go out and study a conch, which is a shellfish. And in order to propagandize people to thinking that nuclear has some benefits and is doing something good and that the species are totally healthy and they're making the world better. And James put out a video for another purpose, but everybody get their own meanings out of this stuff, but it's a song attached to it. The story, there's a link below it. I thought it was on the screen that time. There's a link below it, and you'll find it over at James Lucid on YouTube. He's got 501 videos. And the nuclear municipal wastewater was a wicked beat to that, eh? Anyway, I'm gone. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. See everybody on the next show, whenever that comes along. Have a great one.
Side-by-side biologist identified an adult queen conch moving in shallow water along the bank of the St. Lucie plant intake cooling canal. The biologist captured the queen conch, subsequently documenting its condition through photography and cataloging. The queen conch was released back into the environment at the adjacent Walton Rocks Reef area. Lost queen conch, lost queen conch, lost queen conch. The discovery of the conch in the intake canal was unforeseen. It is believed that the specimen either entered the canal as an adult through the offshore velocity channel or arrived as larvae and subsequently matured within the canal. Lost queen conch, lost queen conch, lost queen conch. Biologists perform ongoing monitoring of the canal for the presence of turtles. Regular surveys are also conducted along the canal banks, and with turtle net St. Lucie will now include queen conch in its shallow water bank inspections, free diving activities and reporting protocols. Lost queen conch, lost queen conch, lost queen conch. The entry of queen conch into the canal cannot be prevented. However, following its discovery, St. Lucie has included this species in its inspection and dive activity monitoring protocols. Lost queen